Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to episode 279 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. The FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report is sponsored by the Red Flag Group. The Red Flag Group is a business advisory, information services, and technological firm that helps clients manage risk across four key risk areas. The risk areas are sales and sales channels, including distributors, resellers, and partners, suppliers, customers, and human capital, which consists of employees and contractors. You can find out more information on the Red Flag Group at their website, www.redflaggroup.com. Today I have back with me my good friend and colleague, Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics. And we talk about next week's SCCE Compliance and Ethics Institute. If you have not signed up to attend, I hope you will do so after you hear this podcast. Adam details some of the fabulous sessions, keynotes, events, networking, and opportunities that you will have at this event. It is truly the year's top compliance and ethics conference, and I hope you will consider attending. There's lots of opportunities for you, even at this late date. So please enjoy this podcast. It comes in at just around 20 minutes. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you back for another episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. Today, I am thrilled to have back my good friend and colleague, Adam Turteltaub. Adam is now the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and International Development at the SCCE. Adam, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back here. Good to talk to you. Well, I think I've talked to you in more exotic countries than I've done most people.
Well, you certainly have. And we're not doing this podcast from Cuba, but you're in LA and I'm here in Houston. But we're going to meet up in about 10 days at the SCCE Compliance and Ethics Institute from September, I think, 24th
to 28th.
25 to 28
Yep.
in Chicago. So I wanted to visit with you a little bit about that. I was just in preparation for our podcast reviewing the brochure, and frankly, Adam, I am just stunned at the quality, the scope, the breadth, and the depth of the speakers. It is just mind-boggling how the SCCE has got really the top compliance professionals from more than even the U.S., but really across the world to come and speak at this event. Are there any that you're particularly looking forward to or stand out for you?
Well, I have to admit I'm a big fan of behavioral economics and the work that those folks have been doing to illuminate human behavior. Those are the people who are taking sort of classical economics and turning it on its head by doing research into how people actually make economic decisions. And we've got Francesca Gino from Harvard Business School coming to give one of our general session addresses, and she should be really terrific. I've talked to her on the phone in preparation for this, and it's really heartening hearing what the work that she's doing. She's going to talk about how decisions get derailed and some of the really insights that come from that behavior in terms of both what compliance officers should do not to get derailed, as well as how workers' decisions get derailed.
So we're just concluding 1 year under the Yates memo, and I noticed that we have one specific session on the Yates memo, but we've got some other sessions which deal with lessons from former DOJ prosecutors and in-house types who have gone through enforcement actions. As you know, Adam, this year has just been almost one for the record books in terms of FCPA enforcement actions from both the DOJ and SEC. We had as many in February as we had in 2015, and it's really continued unabated this summer. So for the FCPA compliance practitioners out there, there will be really some very focused FCPA investigation, Yates memo, kind of enforcement angles. We've also got a look at social media, and I'm excited because I'm presenting with Louis Sapperman, the Chief Compliance Officer from Dun & Bradstreet, about Dun & Bradstreet's what I consider to be incredibly innovative program of utilizing social media in their compliance program, to the point where within the past 30 days, Louis has somehow figured out how to use Pokemon Go in his internal social media tool for his compliance program. And I'm going to be very interested to see how one does that in a compliance program across the globe. But we've got corporate security, we've got Webb Hallback. Webb is a well-known data privacy, data security expert. We've got different countries, Brazil, China, of course, third parties, lots on training, lots on culture. In addition to the economic behavioralists, there will be a fair number of talks on ethical behavior in companies and how to really drive that conversation. Even this week with the, or last week with the announcement of the Wells Fargo matter, I think will be a case that's on everyone's mind around what really drives employees to engage in behavior. If your specific sales quotas are targeted on opening accounts, it's probably an economic certainty that you'll open accounts. And how does economic incentives play into employee behaviors, I think will be an interesting conversation. But Adam, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was the conference beyond simply the sessions that are listed in the conference booklet, because I found the social interactions, the networking, the sitting down with your colleagues, the breakfast, the coffees, the dinners, where you can really share ideas, meet people from different industries, different parts of the country, and indeed different parts of the world, and everybody wants to talk about compliance. You've seen this for several years now. You've seen it grow, but how do you see the social part of the conference?
Well, I have to say you're dead on right in that it really is much more important than a lot of people think. I mean, it's obviously very important to go through the agenda if you're planning on coming, circle the sessions you want to go, get a sense of that. But if all you do is go to the sessions and then at every break, run to your phone to answer email, you're missing out on a lot of the value. I mean, there's going to be 1,600 plus compliance people there. And, you talked about how it's growing international. A month ago, about 2 weeks ago, I went and looked through who was coming and found out we've got 160 people from outside the U.S., which is about 10% of the total, and they come from 40 different countries, including teeny little Andorra, of all places.
Wow.
Which has less than 80,000 people. Yeah. And, it really is tremendously valuable having the opportunity to be in a place where you're not alone. You're surrounded by other people in compliance. You can talk, you have an instant bond of connection, and that you're both in the same profession at the same meeting. Don't need to feel shy about introducing yourself to strangers. And in fact, it's a great opportunity to both bounce ideas off of people, and then also, it sounds dopey, but grab as many cards as you can of people that you meet and talk with and and stay in touch with them through the year. There's going to be times in the course of the year when you're going to find yourself with a situation where you're not really sure what to do, and it's very helpful to have other compliance people you can take advantage of by, feel comfortable with calling. And two things we do to try and facilitate that, in addition to having the networking breaks. One is on Sunday, we have a speed networking session, which is really fun. It's sort of like speed dating, except there's no dating involved. You just come into the room. You first go online if you're planning on coming to the Compliance and Ethics Institute. You register separately for that. You fill out a quick profile about your career, what you're interested in talking about. And then the software matches you with similar people so that you get a series in about an hour of about 5 or 6 different short conversations with people, so you can get a sense of, is this someone I'd want to talk to again? And then you're free to follow up with them after that. And then also on Sunday, we've got a speed mentoring session where people who are more experienced can sign up to be potential mentors. Those with less experience signed up saying they're looking for a mentor. And again, The software matches. You have a series of short meetings to see if maybe there's, a connection there that can lead to further conversations and potentially development of a mentoring relationship.
I did that for the first time last year, Adam, and I sat sort of behind the chair of the mentor. And here was my experience. It was a very powerful experience for the following reasons. Some of the people came looking for mentors, but some came with specific questions. But those questions led to discussions that we really held throughout the 3 days. And as you know, once you start a discussion, you don't know where it's going to end. And so I found it to be an incredibly powerful educational tool for me. And the one I can remember that I would point you to is there was a fellow from the Yellow Pages. And he had a specific question. I can't remember what the question was now, but I would have never thought Yellow Pages, and he was even from Los Angeles, would have an FCPA question, but it was a unique question. And he and I started discussing, and I realized that I really needed to bring in some other counsel. And he and I met a couple of other times for coffee throughout the rest of the week with some other people that I was able to connect him with to help him with his specific question. So it's a very good educational experience for me. On the networking side, I was able to meet several people on a very quick turnaround, as you said, an hour. But the mentoring I really appreciated because it was as much an educational experience as it was social experience meeting people. So if you're coming and you haven't signed up for either of those, I would just urge you to do so. It can be very powerful, very useful. If you have specific questions, you can ask those questions and get some answers. And if you can't get specific answers, you can start a dialogue on that you can continue really throughout the week. So it's a very useful tool.
Yeah, and I just have one other thing is if you're new, you've never been to the meeting before, and you're looking at 4 days of thinking you're not going to know a soul, they're great sessions to sign up for because when you leave, there's going to be at least 5 or 6 friendly, familiar faces of people that you can do, like you talked about, just chat over coffee over the next few days. However, my one big piece of advice for everyone though is sit with different people every chance you get. Both on Monday and Tuesday, sit at a table full of strangers if you can and try and make a table's worth of new contacts.
Absolutely. But Adam, the annual conference, the CEI, Compliance and Ethics Institute, is really just one part of SCCE's overall educational outreach. You've got some academies coming up later this fall. You've got some regional meetings. And one I really wanted to ask you a little bit about. It's I'm not sure if it's an academy. I guess it's called an academy, but it's for board level folks. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's not technically an academy. It's our Board Audit and Compliance Committee Conference. It's a 2-day event. It's going to take place November 7th and 8th in Scottsdale. And the thinking behind it is as more and more compliance people have a straight line or a dotted line responsibility to the board, as the board is expected to exercise greater oversight of the compliance and ethics program, there's a lot of need for board members to understand exactly what that means. What questions should I be asking? What are the issues I should be thinking about? And what this meeting is designed to do is provide board members primarily with a sense of what the expectations are and how they can best meet their obligations to exercise oversight of the organization. Likewise, there's a lot of benefit for the compliance officer, especially if he or she goes with a board member, to have time to work with the board and also to get to understand what the board's perspectives are. I mean, every time a question gets asked, it helps illuminate those questions, and as we deal with issues of what the board's role is, it helps the compliance professional know. So ideally, it's something that a compliance officer would come with his or her counterpart on the board, but even separately, it's a great learning opportunity for people to really help solidify and improve a relationship that's critically important for the success of the compliance program.
And once again, as with a Compliance and Ethics Institute, there's a fair amount of time for networking and socialization so that you can talk to other chief compliance officers, or if you're a board member, talk to other board members, really share questions, share answers. One thing I've learned in the compliance world is there are no trade secrets, and you can generally find someone who has faced your issue before somewhere along the line. So there's lots of talent and there's lots of resources available to you. I'm excited to be a part of the faculty for the first time and really looking forward to hearing the other panelists' presentations as well. That one will be in Scottsdale on November 7th and 8th. Adam, I'm going to link in the show notes to both the Compliance and Ethics Institute and the board training, compliance and board audit compliance and committee conference, so that members and others will have access to that. But I wanted to ask, are you making a presentation this year at the annual CEI?
Yeah, I'm actually going to lead one of the general sessions on what's a relatively new and at the same time been around forever and surprising session, which is going to be on human trafficking and really modern slavery. I mean, it's hard to believe in this day and age that slavery still exists, but it does. And companies have found out that it's in their supply chain. And so what we're going to be talking about is really what the issue is, that it still exists, that there's problems also with human trafficking, people induced to come for work and not really receiving their fair due and ability to leave when they want to go home, and what companies are doing. And we've got one speaker's in the House Compliance Professional is going to talk about what they've done in their organization in this area. Between the UK's Modern Slavery Act and some FAR requirements out there, there's more and more really compliance needs around this area and requirements that companies disclose what they're doing to make sure that there aren't victims of human trafficking and modern slavery in their supply chain or even within their organization.
Adam, I will have to share with you at last year's SCCE Utility and Energy Conference in Houston, probably the most powerful speaker was on that specific topic, and it was powerful. Is he the one that's coming back?
Yeah, he's one of the two speakers for that breakout session. I was there too, and I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen a room more silent in my life than when he was making that presentation, because it's utterly appalling issue that it still exists. And I think the room was rightly mortified to learn about it. And it's a little intimidating to think about that somewhere in your supply chain, your organization may be using slave labor.
Well, and when I think of human slavery, I of course think of the movie Taken with Liam Neeson. And that is just an incredibly small minority of what he talks about and what companies can get in trouble with, to the point where I was sitting next to a colleague also in the energy space, and I said something along the lines of, when I was at Halliburton, we never looked at that issue for our supply boats in Angola. And this person looked at me and he said, we don't look at for that same issue for our supply boats in the United States. And it made me realize this is not just something that happens in the Far East or, off the coast of Africa. I mean, this has happened in the United States, and the presenter gave specific examples of how that had happened and how companies had gotten into trouble simply by not paying attention. So if you are interested in how to comply with the various laws that Adam named, you really should consider checking out that session. It's an extraordinarily powerful presentation. Well, Adam, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I'm going to, like I said, put in the show notes links to the both the Compliance and Ethics Institute and the Board and Audit Committee training session in November. But if anyone had any specific questions and wanted to email you, could they do so? And if so, how would they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, with a name as challenging as mine, it's not as easy as it should be. So my email address is adam.turteltaub@corporatecompliance.org. And I warn everyone that my name does not spell like the animal, the turtle. So it's Adam, which is ADAM, .TURTEL not TLE, but TURTELTAUB at corporatecompliance.org.
I would just suggest if people have trouble with that, they look for you at a very nice hotel in Havana. It's much easier that way.
Yeah, I stand out sort of anywhere I go.
So, Adam, with that, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in about, I guess it is tomorrow. It'll be 10 days. So I look forward to seeing you in Chicago. I know you've got a trip or two in between. So bon voyage, safe travels, and see you in Chicago.
Thank you. See you there.
This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. I have 2 calls to action for you. If you are listening to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate us. It would certainly help in our rankings. The second thing is I'm developing my next mailbag episode, so if you have any questions, please email me. Finally, last week I did a blog post series on passion around the compliance profession and why you find working in compliance meaningful. If you're going to attend the SCCE conference, I would like to get your thoughts on those topics. I'm going to put together a montage of compliance professionals. So if I ask you to do so, I hope that you would give me a few words on why you think compliance is meaningful and why you are passionate about compliance. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance Report.